All right, man, peace. So Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman had a very good segment on who they deemed to be the NBA players under the most pressure this season. So, of course, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
I know what this team expects of me. I know what I expect of myself. And that's it.
I'm a fun guy. Obviously, I love the game of basketball.
The only thing that I have to prove is to myself. Like, just make sure that I go out there and give it my best and play my hardest.
Why do you think that narrative is circulating that building these quote-unquote super teams is ruining the league?
I don't know, and I really don't care.
I agree with that, bro. That's a very good answer. It's not your job to care about why other people think that you joining a certain team is going to hurt the NBA. That's nonsense.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to dribble tomorrow. So I can't tell you what's going to happen in the near future. I don't know.
They never going to let Kawhi live that shit down. Man, sound like he was choking on a chicken bone.
Oh my God, that laugh.
He's only laughed like 3 times in his life, so it comes out strange, it looks like.
So good.
He's a bad brother. He can ball.
No.
Thank you, Stephen A. Smith. That's all that matters. Who gives a damn how he laughs? He plays exceptionally well.
No shortage of storylines among the NBA superstar this offseason. Max, I got to ask you this. Which player's under the most pressure?
Before Max Kellerman answers, let me say this. In my view, the players under the most pressure this season, they come in a tandem because their careers have been linked due to their friendship, and now their overall fate in the NBA is going to be linked according to their friendship, their camaraderie, and them being teammates. And those two players are Chris Paul and Carmelo Anthony. There's no doubt in my mind that those are the two players in the NBA that are under the most pressure to succeed this year. They're both 33 years old, and for all intents and purposes, this is going to be the best chance, and most likely the last chance that either one of them have to make a viable run at an NBA championship. Coming up right after them is Mr. Kyrie Irving, because he will be expected to lead the Boston Celtics at least to the NBA Finals. Kawhi Leonard is under pressure because he has to show that he has been able to reassume his mantle of being one of the top players in the NBA. And of course, LeBron James is always under a certain amount of pressure, at the very least, to assist the LA Lakers in making the playoffs. In my view, those are the players in the NBA right now that are under the most pressure.
I think there are 5 players.
I have to hear this.
I think there are 5 players under pressure,
Five?
different than the rest of the league.
All right, but
and I think we saw a couple of them. I'll
make
start
it
at
quick.
5.
I need my pen out.
I'll start at 5.
Okay.
I got it.
Carmelo Anthony.
Oh, you
Because
got the legal
Carmelo
pen.
Anthony was in the draft class with LeBron and Dwayne Wade, who are both multiple-time champions. His offensive skills at his best were nearly, at least his scoring skills, were nearly perfect. He's one of the most perfect scorers you'll ever see from anywhere on the floor.
Carmelo Anthony at his peak was an elite-level scorer. He was an elite-level offensive player. His offensive skill set was never perfect. To be quite frank with you, he was never good enough around the basket to be described as a perfect offensive ball player. The player from the 1980s that he's the most often compared to is Bernard King, and he is nowhere near on the level of Bernard King as an offensive player. Go look up Bernard King's numbers in his prime in the early to mid-80s. He was averaging high 20s to 30 points per game and shooting 55+% from the field. And this was a brother who was taking mid-range, long-range jump shots. Of course, he also was dominant in the low box, but for the most part, he was taking mid-range jumpers. He was being highly contested. He was being double-teamed. He was still dominant. Carmelo has never been that level of offensive player.
Variety of ways he could score the ball.
Okay.
And yet, he's never sniffed the championship, and now he's on a team, guys, that lost a couple of nice role players.
The reason why Carmelo has never sniffed a championship is because he's not a championship-level player, at least not as a leader. Carmelo at his best, to me, would have been the third best player on a championship-level team. Not even second best, third best. A lot of brothers might not like me saying that, but to me, there's a reason why. He was the original third pick for the Miami Heat as opposed to Chris Bosh. He would have fit in perfectly on that team.
Yep.
But not nucleus-type players. He's added to that team. Stephen A. said he has the point guard. He wants the whole thing. Are they going to? They came within 1 game of getting to the finals last year.
Wait, do me a favor. First, rip through.
That's why I believe that the pressure that is on Carmelo Anthony is also on Chris Paul, because they're inextricably linked. Not only because of their friendship, but because they're both 33 years old. They never won a championship. Chris Paul finally reached his first conference finals last year. Carmelo Anthony has only been to one. They have to break through this year.
Through all of them.
4.
And then we can get into all of them. I want to hear them all.
Okay, great. 4, Kawhi Leonard.
Okay, Kawhi.
3.
And his laugh. Yep.
That's right. James Harden.
Okay.
2.
James Harden will probably make my list also, but he's at 5. I think that James Harden has shown more than enough accomplishments in regards to postseason that he should have a little less pressure on him than the other two prominent members of the Houston Rockets. I just think that he's pretty much shown that at the very least, he's been able to lead his team to the Western Conference Finals just on his back, because he's been to the Western Conference Finals before CP3 even got there. So I can't compare the amount of pressure on James Harden to the amount of pressure on CP3 and Carmelo. Plus, James is what, 28 years old?
LeBron James. And the player with the most pressure on him in the NBA this season is Kyrie Irving.
Kyrie's up there, but I would not say that he's number one. Once again, number one is CP3 and Carmelo Anthony. Kyrie's only 25 years old. He's already won a championship. So there's only so much pressure that is on him. He can't be number one.
Number 1, Kyrie Irving. I mentioned about Carmelo, Stephen A., Kawhi Leonard.
Pretty good list, though. But I would have CP3 in my top 5 over James Harden. And I would have Carmelo Anthony number 1, CP3 number 2. Number 3, I'd probably have either Kyrie or Kawhi. And then LeBron would be 5.
Leonard, is he the best player in the Eastern Conference? On paper, it looks like that. Him or the Greek Freak. He's on a team that won the conference last year. A lot. Can he do it with...
I'm not sure that I would take the Greek Freak over Kyrie Irving. The Greek Freak has been getting a lot of positive publicity. He's going to have to break through in the playoffs.
Can he do it without Popovich? James Harden, of course. Look, Harden came around a little bit on the defensive, like as a conference finals player last year, but still couldn't buy a shot. LeBron James is now on the win.
Well, look, here's what we know about James Harden. James Harden is an offensive player with a lot of tricks in his bag. He utilizes a lot of chicanery out there on the basketball floor. He frustrates a lot of his defenders because he initiates contact, but he always seems to get the whistle. He really plays basketball like a football running back. He lowers his shoulder. The only player in the NBA who lowers his shoulder more than James Harden is LeBron James. So James Harden is always going to frustrate you in the regular season. Now in the postseason, when he's not getting those foul calls, it's going to be far more difficult for him to be proficient. And he's not really a proficient offensive player anyway. Even in the regular season, he only shoots about 44%. So in the playoffs, he's going to shoot somewhere around 41, 42%, and he's not going to get those foul calls. So he's always going to be somebody that needs help. He's going to need a CP3 and a Carmelo to help him out as much as possible in the postseason.
Winning his the most important franchise in the history of the sport, with championship expectations with a crew that's not ready. They got to at least win a playoff series in the West that's not guaranteed. And then Kyrie Irving. They had a single-digit loss in Game 7 in the Eastern Conference Finals without him last year. Yeah. And I think the Raptors are a real threat, and it would be bad for the Celtics not to get to the finals. This season, Kyrie's the best player on a great team.
I agree with that part. They do have to get to the finals this year. Kyrie's going to have to lead them to the finals this year. But he's not under the most pressure of anybody in the NBA. No way.
How can I count the ways?
Yes, please count the ways and instruct this dude, Stephen A. Smith, if you can.
First of all, let me go down this list, your list right here, because I didn't know anything, you know what I'm saying, we prepped for the show, whatever, and I specifically did not want to know anything about his list. Okay. I wanted to hear it live on the air like the rest of America, and I wanted to pick it apart. Number 1, Melo gets off the list.
No, Melo cannot be off the list. Not only is he not off the list, he's one of the top 2 most under pressure players in the NBA. That's why he's getting spoken about so much, Stephen A. Smith. You can protect your friend all you want. I don't give a damn. The brother's 33 years old. He has to win.
He's not even on the top 5 list. Here's why. It pains me to say this, but there aren't that great of expectations for Carmelo Anthony.
Well, you know what, Stephen A. Smith? I beg to disagree with you, because there are a lot of expectations for Carmelo Anthony. The expectations that are on him is that at the very least, the Houston Rockets are going to be able to get as far in the playoffs this year as they did last year. If the Rockets do not get as far in the playoffs this year as they did last year, who are they going to blame? they're not going to blame CP3 or James Harden. They're going to blame your boy Carmelo Anthony. So yes, there is a lot of pressure on Carmelo Anthony.
He's past his prime.
Well, no shit, but that's not going to be an excuse.
If you want to look at it and say Melo's got something to prove, that's a different subject. But in terms of pressure, as in, oh, I have to produce, I'm sorry, I'm scratching him right off that list.
No, sir, it doesn't quite work like that. As a matter of fact, having a lot to prove is oftentimes based on expectations. And the higher the expectations, the more pressure. So the amount of proof that you are compelled to have to be able to substantiate has a direct correlation to pressure. So there's always going to be a rapport there. There's always going to be a connection there. So, no, sir.
And I'm putting CP3.
I knew you would do that.
CP3. Let me tell you something right now.
That's the answer. But they're related, Stephen A. Smith. They both deserve to be number 1/1A. Really, I can't even say 1 and 2. 1 and 1A are CP3 and Carmelo, or Carmelo and CP3.
Now, Melo ain't been to the finals. Neither has CP3. CP3 is the one that's going to get over $37 million a year. Melo just signed for minimum, bro.
Right, but you know what, Stephen A. Smith? CP3 has a history of playing relatively well in the playoffs. Carmelo Anthony does not. Even though CP3 has never gotten anywhere near close to winning a championship, he's been farther in the playoffs than Carmelo Anthony has, at least as of last year. And he had a far more realistic chance to win the championship last year than Carmelo ever has. At the end of the day, CP3 is a 6-foot point guard. Carmelo Anthony is 6'7". If CP3 does what he normally does, average about 18 and 8, play hard-nosed defense, they're not going to blame him. They're going to look at Carmelo Anthony. They're going to say Carmelo averaged 12 points a game on 40% from the field. Even if he's only playing 20 minutes, they're going to blame him.
Bottom line is CP3 is universally recognized as one of the great point guards. I think he's...
Well, shit, you just said that Carmelo Anthony's one of the great scorers. Really, you say he's the greatest scorer of his generation.
He's the greatest pure point guard of this generation. The greatest pure point guard of this generation. See?
Well, it depends on what exactly you're considering this generation. Because if we're going to go back to, say, 2000, then the best point guard overall of this generation is Jason Kidd. And then right after him is Steve Nash. Then I would probably put CP3 right after those two.
CP3 is that big time to me, okay? Well, if you got Melo and you got James Harden, and in all fairness to CP3, we don't know what would have happened, because had he not gotten hurt at the end of Game 5,
Oh, enough of that shit already. You guys keep talking about if. Series is over.
Game 6 and 7, chances are Houston might have won, even though I still picked Golden State to win. I said they were going to win in Game 7 at Toyota Center, but CP3 wasn't there, so we'll never know. But the point is, I would have loved to have seen it. He got hurt, and it wasn't like he was choking prior to that. He was balling. So, mad love and respect for that, but he's got to do it again, okay? You got Kawhi Leonard up in here. No, he comes off the list, Max.
No, sir. Kawhi Leonard is under pressure. Not only does he have to show that he has returned and that he's rejuvenated and that he can return to the form that he had back in the 2016-2017 season with the Spurs, he's going to have to show that he can be the alpha on a team with championship aspirations. It does not mean that there's pressure on him to win the championship, but the Raptors are going to be expected to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. And for a player who pretty much has missed an entire season, there is a lot of pressure on him. On top of that, he has to prove that he's going to be a viable option for a team looking to sign him in the offseason. So yes, Kawhi Leonard deserves to be on that list also.
Why? Because Kawhi Leonard is a champion and an NBA Finals MVP. Why was he out last year? Played 9 games. He was hurt. That's not pressure.
That's pressure. He's looking for a contract, Stephen A. Smith. Of course, we can assume that he's going to get it. Look at Max Kellerman's face. Like, is this Negro crazy?
There is no question.
Stephen A.
Has he ever played with...
Thank you. Even Molly had to cut him off. Because Stephen A must be smoking something. Maybe he's on the weed.
Without Popovich?
No, he has not. Let me finish. I'll let y'all finish. Here's the deal. Kawhi Leonard is somebody you sit here and say is a top 3 player in the world.
No, you don't. You don't say that right now. He has to prove that. He has to come back and show that he's the same top 3 player that he was back in the 2016-2017 season. So once again, Steve, you're refuting your own statements.
When he's healthy. And you combine that with him already being a champion, and you combine that with the fact that he's going to a new team who doesn't have Dwayne Casey as its coach anymore. We don't know if this guy can coach.
They still have relatively the same personnel. Their team is filled with veterans. How much coaching is Nick Nurse going to be expected to do, especially with a Kawhi Leonard? So at the end of the day, the NBA is known for being a league where the coaches are not expected to do that much when you have a relatively veteran, experienced team. There is pressure on Kawhi.
We'll find out. So again, you're going to a new, not only is he going to a new team, he's going to a new country. Okay, he's in a different country. He's playing in Toronto. And oh, by the way, he has no intention of staying there.
He ain't going to Zamunda.
What does that have to do with the price of tea in China?
Zamunda, he's going to Canada.
You got a coach with a team that I don't believe is good enough to win it all. And he's already a champion and an NBA Finals MVP.
Stephen A. Smith, I have news for you. The question is not which player is under the most pressure to win a championship. The question is, which player is under the most pressure this season? That's the question.
I'm scratching Kawhi Leonard off that list. You know who I'm putting on that list? Anthony Davis. You know why I'm putting Anthony Davis? We having discussions about him being the best player in the world. Excuse me, can you get out the second round? Can you do that? It's basketball. It's basketball.
Wait a minute, Steve. Wait a minute. So now Kawhi Leonard is not under any pressure after a year off, but Anthony Davis is under pressure when you're not even prognosticating Anthony Davis to get to the third round. You stated that LeBron James is going to get to the third round and face the Golden State Warriors. So how much pressure can you possibly assert that Anthony Davis is under if you're claiming that can you get to the third round? You don't even have him prognosticated to get there. So he can't possibly be under that much pressure.
It's not football. You're that big time.
His team is good enough to get out of the second round?
Excuse me, I don't know if he's got, listen, as long as you don't run and go to state, it's up for grabs, ain't it not?
You are missing the point.
Did we not?
I agree, sir. He is missing the point.
I see the New Orleans Pelicans sweep Damian Lillard, and oh, by the way,
Okay, but what does that mean? They swept Damian Lillard and the Portland Trail Blazers. What have they ever done? What the hell have the Portland Trail Blazers ever done that is supposed to be this unbelievable achievement? Now, it was great for that team and for the New Orleans Pelicans because they had never won a playoff series since Anthony Davis had gotten there. That was a great step for him. But that's not like some great feather in the cap. Anthony Davis is under pressure to put up MVP numbers this regular season and to get out the first round. Once he gets out the first round, whoever they face, if they get knocked off in the second round, according to most prognostications, they will be expected to lose to the team that they face in the second round, whether it's Golden State, the Rockets, or the Lakers. Because by the playoffs, if the Lakers get out the first round, all of the prognosticators and the NBA pundits are going to jump on the LeBron James bandwagon again.
He's on my list too. So I'm taking off Kawhi. I'm putting Anthony Davis in there, but before him, lower on the list, I put Damian Lillard up there only because I think he's a star. He's big time, but he got swept.
Well, there's a little bit of pressure on Damian Lillard. I would agree with that, but nowhere near as much as is on those other players.
Now, they were doubling him and stuff, but he still got swept. So I want to see what he does, but I got him, and I'll leave Kyrie on that list. I got no problems with that.
Kyrie has to be on the list. He has to make the finals. Without him last year, that team got to a Game 7, and they were on the verge of finally knocking off LeBron James.
LeBron? None. None whatsoever this year. LeBron
is under pressure. That team has to make the playoffs. You're just assuming that they're going to make it. I believe that they will. But if they don't make the playoffs, would I be absolutely falling down shocked? No, I would not. The West is no joke. And there are a lot of teams that I could see beating the Lakers at least once. I could see the Phoenix Suns defeating the Lakers at least once. I could see the Dallas Mavericks beating them. That's not even talking about the playoff teams.
Is playing with house money for this season, not next.
Gotta win a playoff. Can he miss the playoffs?
No, I'm not.
Can he get bumped in the first round?
Time. We're not having that discussion. I'm not even contemplating LeBron James out of the playoffs.
Well, you better contemplate it because it is a possibility. It's relatively remote based off of the credit that we give the brother for his excellence over the course of 15 years. But once again, If the Lakers were to not make the playoffs, it would not shock me. It really wouldn't. As of right now, I have them winning somewhere between 47, 48 games and maybe at the most 51 or 52 games. But if they only won 42 games or 43 games and didn't make the playoffs, would it shock me? No, it would not.
Did the Lakers make the playoffs last year?
Time out.
No, they haven't.
Hold on. Because what you know what? I'm going to help you out without more than meters because we know you need help there. Here's a question for you.
Who?
Do you
Who
really?
needs help?
Are you really to say on national television that the Lakers ain't making the playoffs?
No.
Okay then. So we ain't talking about it. We're not talking about it. I'm assuming. We're both assuming.
Tell me when you're done because there's a premise that you are missing.
I'm done with this statement. We're not entertaining a discussion about the Lakers not making the playoffs.
Well, Max Kellerman has not stated that the Lakers will not make the playoffs. All he's saying is that it is within the realm of possibility, and I agree with him.
Even LeBron, and we'll get back to that in a second.
As long as LeBron James doesn't miss the playoffs, he's playing with house money this year.
Okay.
No, not quite. Not quite. They have to make the playoffs, and they have to win their first round matchup.
Okay, look, let's table LeBron.
This year.
Let's table LeBron. Everybody else you're wrong about. And the reason you're wrong is you're insisting. CP3 we can argue about.
I left Kyrie Irving on there.
You are insisting. I'm talking about the changes you made with Damian Lillard. And who else did you add?
Anthony Davis.
Anthony Davis and Damian Lillard. Anthony Davis and Damian Lillard instead of Carmelo and Harden, right?
Right.
Okay. Here's what you're missing. Anthony Davis's team isn't good enough, and everyone knows it.
Thank you, sir. The pressure that you're under is directly related to the expectations for you and your team, oftentimes based on your age and where you are at a certain point in your career. What's expected of Anthony Davis, once again, is that he's going to put up MVP numbers in the regular season and get to the second round. He has to get out the first round. Okay, I mean, unless they're playing the Golden State Warriors in the first round, they're expected to get out of the first round. Based off of what I've seen from the New Orleans Pelicans in the first two games, they look like they're going to win 50-plus games. So that's probably going to put them somewhere around the third or fourth seed. So most likely in the first round, they're going to be facing a team like the OKC Thunder, someone like that. And they're going to be expected to win that series. That's the pressure that he's under. Damian Lillard and this current NBA, pressure for him is making the playoffs. If Portland makes the playoffs and say they get a 6th seed and they were to lose in the first round to New Orleans again, or say 7th seed, they lost to the Rockets, that's not a big deal. That's just all poor Dame. That's all that is.
You're trying to hold him accountable for teammates that aren't good enough. We all know what Anthony Davis is going to do.
Well, I disagree with that. I think that he is going to have a pretty good team this year, and they are going to have to get out the first round.
If not better. He's going to average 28 points and 11 rebounds and 2.5 blocks to lead the league, and his PER will be among league leaders, if not league leaders. He'll be a great defensive player. We know that. Drew Holiday will be clutch. But otherwise, there's simply not enough talent on that team. Damian Lillard. If Nurkic could be a really good player instead of maybe a guy with potential.
Well, basically, based on what you're saying, how come you don't have DeMarcus Cousins on your list? He's going to the World Championship. He averaged.
Come on now. What type of silly question is that? Why would he have DeMarcus Cousins on the list of the players under the most pressure when he's coming off of an Achilles tear? If DeMarcus Cousins does not play one game this year, people might be surprised, but they will say to themselves, maybe there was an issue, maybe there was a complication with his rehab. But there's no pressure on DeMarcus Cousins. The pressure on DeMarcus Cousins is not to implode the Golden State Warriors locker room. That's it.
28 and 12.
Because he's going to average 18 minutes, 20 minutes a game in the second half.
Listen,
No, come on.
DeMarcus Cousins on one leg is better than Zsa Pachulia.
Because
on one leg.
Forget about
it's better than Zsa
Forget about DeMarcus.
Well, they won titles without
no one thinks there's
Somebody check Stephen A. Smith's smoothie. I think there's some herbs in there that shouldn't be in there.
pressure on DeMarcus Cousins. Neither you nor I.
I'm just saying.
Let's stick to what we disagree about.
Right, go ahead.
Okay, so Harden, Carmelo, CP3. I didn't want to put three guys in the same team, but you could add CP3 if you want to.
CP3 and Carmelo Anthony are under sizably more pressure than James Harden. I'm telling you that again because however the Rockets fare this season, they're going to get the brunt of the blame, not James Harden. Number one, they're going to blame Carmelo because it seems as though toxicity and failure have followed Carmelo wherever he's gone in recent years. Number two, they're going to blame Chris Paul because that's his friend. And third, they're going to blame James Harden based on whatever the performance James Harden has in the playoffs. We know as the series go along, James Harden tends to have more of those 3 for 19 performances. So we'll see.
I'm taking CP3 ahead of Melo.
The only change on the team is you took some good defensive players out and you added Carmelo Anthony. Meaning if they do worse than last year, which I think is probable, Carmelo will take blame. And that's pressure.
Thank you, sir.
Carmelo, at a certain point, people are going to say, Melo, what do you need to make the finals? You got everything you need.
Unless CP3 has a worse season than he did last year.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is I'm very confident in CP3.
Well,
so am I.
So am I, but that doesn't negate the fact that he's got to do it.
CP3 has choked at times under pressure where you're like, that's not what I expected, but he's basically a pressure player.
Because he has an anxiety disorder. That's why CP3 sometimes he gets so tight under pressure. And oftentimes he's able to overcome that and still perform and execute. But you can see it in his face. He just starts to grit his teeth so hard. And that's why he has these moments where he just lashes out. He bites people, he kicks them, and all this other craziness.
Player. James Harden has not come through under pressure.
Hey, listen, I didn't take James Harden off this list. I didn't take him off this list. So, how you disagree with that? I didn't take him off.
Once again, here's the thing with James Harden. James Harden has been to the conference finals without CP3 or Carmelo. That's what he's done. CP3 has never been to the conference finals without James Harden. In regards to Carmelo Anthony, he's been to the conference finals one time, and that was with Chauncey Billups. So we know damn well Carmelo Anthony is not going to get to the conference finals unless he has a ticket to attend in the stands. That's about it. He has to be a member of the audience to get to the conference finals without James Harden.
Hold on. So let's stick to where we disagree, okay? You are adding Damian Lillard and Anthony Davis, players whose teams haven't improved, players who you're holding responsible for doing more than anyone other than LeBron James is capable of doing.
Listen. Let me respond to your drivel, okay? Here's the deal. Anthony Davis is in the discussion for the best player in the world. Anthony Davis just let go of his agent and is signed with Clutch Sports under Rich Paul. You got people out there assuming he'll end up in L.A., Boston, or Golden State. I
agree. I think that at least at some point this season, depending on how well New Orleans plays, if suddenly they drop off or what have you, you're going to see Anthony Davis's name pop up as trade bait or to be traded to either Boston or L.A. I'm not quite sure about Golden State. Possibly in the offseason. That could happen if he's still with the New Orleans Pelicans. But before the trade deadline, the Lakers and the Boston Celtics are going to come calling. That's why I say watch for the Boston Celtics to try to get Gordon Hayward as much playing time as possible.
Like, he is the missing piece, okay? And we all know that Anthony Davis is a superstar. Superstar, great guy, the whole deal. My point to you is this. And I've said this to you on many occasions. This is basketball. It's not football where you got 10 other guys on the field with you. This is basketball. You run into a juggernaut that is different. With Drew Holiday, who you admit is tough as nails. I love him too. My point to you is this. If you've got two dudes, particularly when you sweep in the Portland Trailblazers, don't go out in 5 games in the second round. Show up.
Stephen A.
Well, I would agree with that. In the second round, if the New Orleans Pelicans, if they face the Rockets, I would expect that series, if the New Orleans Pelicans were to lose, to go no less than 7 games. It has to go 7 games for me to give Anthony Davis a pass. Now, if they face the Golden State Warriors, they could possibly lose in 5 or 6 games again. But any team other than the Golden State Warriors, I would expect the Pelicans this season to take it to at least 6 games, but really 7 games.
Don't do it. Hold on. I have my own individual expectations for Anthony Davis. Now let me get back.
With Anthony Davis, I look at his expectations being more in regards to his proficiency. In the second round, even if they lose, I expect him to put up numbers, high 20s points per game, 12, 13 rebounds, 2.5, 3 blocks, something like that, over 50% from the field. That's what I'm looking at from him.
To what I said about CP3. CP3, I believe he's going to be better. We don't know for sure. I say to you, Damian Lillard, you averaging 25 a game. Mr. Clutch, big time baller. Love Damian Lillard.
I like Dame also, but we have to understand something about Dame Lillard. He's a very streaky shooter. He's a very streaky scorer. When he gets hot, he can get as hot as anybody in the NBA, and that includes Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. But when he's cold, that brother has games where he shoots 4 for 22. Like, you know, and once again, that's the difference. That's why I liken the comparison of Steph Curry to Damian Lillard to the comparison of Jordan to Kobe Bryant. Because when Kobe got hot, he got even hotter than Jordan. When Dame Lillard gets hot, he gets as hot, if not even hotter than Steph. But the thing with Jordan and Steph is that they don't have those terrible shooting nights that the Kobe's and the Dame Lillards have. That takes their shooting percentage down to 44, 45%. That's why Curry's always shooting up around 48, 49% every year. Same thing with Jordan, because they might not get quite as unbelievably hot as those other players, but they never get as cold. Or maybe like once a year they'll have a game like that.
All I'm saying is, even though it wasn't entirely his fault because he was getting doubled every time he touched the ball, bottom line is, you can't get swept. I'm looking at you.
You're looking at benchmarks like, did you lose in 5 games or 6 games? Did you get swept? Did you give me a good feeling when I watched you?
Expectations of what I'm telling you.
What I'm telling you is, I'm not saying, hey, Anthony Davis, Damian Lillard, do the impossible. I'm saying, hey, Kawhi Leonard, who I do think is a top 2 player when healthy, but certainly top 5 according to everyone.
Yeah, he's definitely top 5 if he's fully healthy.
Now you're not playing with Popovich. You don't have Popovich as your coach, but you are on a team that won 55 games, and the Eastern Conference had the best record. Had the best record in the Eastern Conference last year. So you're in a position where you could realistically challenge for a title. You're out on your own now. No Popovich. Do you sink or swim? Do you make the Raptors better than they were or not? You're now the best player on a team who has a real chance to get to the finals. Do you do it or not? That is pressure. Not, hey, Anthony Davis, make a miracle. Hey, Damian Lillard, make a miracle. Hey, Kawhi Leonard, do what you're supposed to do.
And my problem is that you're labeling it as a miracle. The fact is this. When you look, they got a coach named Nick Nurse. I don't know this man. That's the coach of the Raptors. Yeah. I don't know this man. He's assistant.
Who cares if you don't know him, Stephen A. Smith? Who cares? His name is Nick Nurse. Give the man a chance. We'll see what happens. In regards to expectations, once again, if you're going to tell me that these certain players have these unbelievable expectations, then you have to follow up and say that their teams have a certain expectation. You can't tell me that you expect Anthony Davis to do something, but you're not even picking his team to get to the 3rd round.
He's assistant coach. Yes, I don't know this. Listen, what I'm saying to you is this. Yeah, I hope. Listen, I know what Dwayne Casey could do. I know the chemistry that they had.
Yes, I know what Dwayne Casey can do also. He can get his team to the point where they get blitzkrieged in the playoffs.
I also know the liabilities that they have as well. And I'm saying to you that I anticipate that those same liabilities, not to the degree that it happened when they went up against LeBron, because he just punked them all.
What was the liability?
Excuse me?
What was the liability?
LeBron.
The liability was their best player wasn't good enough. DeMar DeRozan wasn't good enough.
No.
Simple as that. That's exactly what the liability was. The liability was that DeMar DeRozan was not good enough. And I'm sure that Stephen A. Smith is going to say something about the greatness of LeBron James. It wasn't even that DeMar DeRozan wasn't good enough on the basketball floor. He was not good enough in between his ears. Once again, it is a red flag when your best player is constantly having psychological issues and mental breakdowns. And the Toronto Raptors had 2 players like that. Not just DeMar DeRozan, but also Kyle Lowry, who had to go back and decompress or whatever the hell he had to do in that one series a couple of years ago.
No,
Kawhi's supposed to be.
The liability was LeBron. That was the liability.
And what did LeBron do when Kawhi checked into the game in the finals?
Excuse me, what team was he playing with?
The point is,
I hear your point.
The liability is LeBron without Kawhi there.
You act like I ain't understanding. Again, Max Kellerman is always under this assumption that you don't understand because I don't agree with your behind. I do.
Roll the bump.
The point is so clear.
It's wrong.
Or first take.
I have to agree with you, Max Kellerman. Stephen A. Smith, to me, he was just grasping at straws. But it is what it is. So peace.